All right, guys, so we are going to start our introduction into genetics. And this actually is going to be a very long one, so I'm going to divide it into a couple of points. So make sure that you take very good detailed C notes because there's going to be a lot of vocabulary that you're going to need to know for the future PBO. All right, so essential questions that we're going to go over is how does sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction impact the diversity of offspring? You should have learned the terms sexual and asexual in sixth grade when you went over kingdoms. So now we're going to take that and talk about how it affects the diversity of offspring. And how are inherited traits determined by genetic material? So have you ever noticed that the actors, which are half brothers, Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, look little like each other? Well, that's because they share the same father, Martin Sheen. So look at them and you can tell that they are all related. Now, notice that Martin Sheen has blue eyes, where Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen have brown. Yet he is their father. So how can you have different color eyes from your parents, but yet you be made up of them? Well, the answer is genetics. So ever also wonder why Yo Ming, who's 7'5", grew so tall? Well, his mother was 6'3", and his father was 6'10". Or ever marvel at the fact that ligers actually do exist? Well, we know that our knowledge to all of this is genetics. So actually, let's talk about genetics. Heredity is the process in which traits pass from parents to offspring. So definitely write this definition down in your C notes. Heredity is the process of traits that pass from the parents to their offspring. So from your parents to the child, you get traits. Like that. The scientific study of heredity is called genetics. So the fact that we are going to be studying how traits are getting passed from one offspring to another, from one generation to another, is going to be called genetics. But to understand that, you need to understand what a trait is. So genetics is the study of heredity and how traits are passed along from parents to offspring. Genes are contained within our chromosomes that are found in the egg and sperm. Now, when we went over the reproductive system, we know that females produce a reproductive gamete called eggs, and males produce a reproductive gamete called sperm. Well, we know that we get our genes from our parents, but did you realize that everybody is exactly 50% their mom and 50% their dad? The 50% of DNA that you get from your mom comes from the egg, and the exact 50% of DNA that you get from your dad comes from the sperm. Each parent contributes only half of each pair of the 23 chromosomes to their child, 22 autosomal chromosomes and 1 sex chromosome. So all human beings have 26 chromosomes, but notice I said pair. So you actually have a total of 46. You got 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad. So let's look at what a chromosome actually is. A chromosome is pretty much just all your genetic material, your DNA that is wound up very tightly in a nice little package. So if we take our DNA, which is our double helix, and we start to wrap it around some nucleosomes, then we're going to wrap that into this very thick super rope coil, and then we're going to take that coil and wrap it even further to make a chromosome. So we have 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes of this in every single nucleus and every single cell in our body. And this is where all of the information to making us who we are comes from. This is what allows us to have blue eyes or blonde hair, your mother's nose, your father's eyes. It's all broken down into the code of your DNA. So 46 chromosomes in humans. Males have 44 autosomal chromosomes. Now, these autosomal chromosomes are anything that's going to decode for everything except your sex. Your sex is going to be that last one. Males will always have a sex chromosome as an X and a Y. And females will always have two sex chromosomes as an XX. So notice that females have nothing to give but an X, where males could either give an X or a Y. This is why males actually determine the sex of a baby. Females can do nothing but donate half their X. So you could either give them the first X in the egg or the second X in the egg, where a male could give you the first X, making a female, or give you the Y, making a male. So it's actually men that determine the sex of a baby by getting that Y chromosome. So here's a picture of some human chromosomes. Again, don't forget that chromosomes are just very tightly wound up DNA that's located in our nucleus. So you have pair 1 all the way to pair 22 that are your autosomal chromosomes, and then you have pair 23, which determines your sex. Now, all of them do actually look like X's, and yes, some are bigger than others. The 23rd pair will always be your sex. Now, notice how this is clearly an X, and this one is a lot smaller, meaning it's a Y. So this is actually the genetic makeup of a male. Here's a real picture of what chromosomes look like under an electron microscope. Notice how you can actually see thicker bands, and here this is what they look like. So this is an XX, so it's a female. Here's a real image of a male. Notice how you have the long X and the short Y, so this is a male. And again, you get 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad. So you are exactly half your mom and exactly half your dad. So if you're exactly half your mom and you're half your dad, how come you might favor one more than the other? Well, the answer to this are traits. Your traits are your physical characteristics that are controlled by the genetic material in the cells of an organism. So when we talk about a trait, we could, like we did in our class today, are you right-handed? Do you have a widow's peak? Do you have a cleft chin? Do you have freckles? These are traits that we physically can see, but are controlled by the genetic material in your DNA. The genetic material of organisms are found in these rod-like structures that we call chromosomes, which are located in the nucleus of the cell. So if you want to go back and draw that picture of how the DNA was winding around the nucleosomes all the way into a chromosome, that would be very helpful. So let's go into chromosomes. Chromosomes are made partly of long chain molecules of DNA, which is a segment of called genes. So your chromosomes are your genes. In fact, your chromosome is broken down into many genes. A gene is a segment of the DNA molecule that contains information that governs a specific trait. So kind of think of like a computer programmer, how they will type in a series of algorithms to make a program. Well, your chromosomes are the long chains. That is the program of the algorithm that they're typing in to create the game, which would be the trait. So draw this picture in your journal. Notice how we have the DNA. So from here to here, this section of DNA is what we would call a gene. When you take this gene plus this gene plus this gene and wound it up very tightly in a very rope-like package, that is called a chromosome, and the chromosomes are located in the nucleus of a eukaryotic cell. So we know that humans are made up of trillions of cells, and each cell has 46 human chromosomes, 2 meters of DNA, 3 billion DNA subunits, which are A, T, C, and G, and over 80,000 genes that code for proteins that perform all life's functions. So let's talk about DNA for a little bit. DNA actually stands for deoxyribose nucleic acid. There are 4 bases that make up the DNA. There are adenine, which is what A stands for, thymine, T, cytosine, C, and guanine, G. So all DNA for every living organism is made up of these 4 bases, A, T, C, and G. And the bases only pair up in a certain way, and they will always pair up this way. A will always pair up with T, and C will always pair up with G. So the way I remember it is it will always form at, and C and G look like they're similar, so they go together. So A and T will always bond together, C and G. Now it's the combination of how they combine what makes everybody so different. And now think about it. Chimpanzees and humans have 97% identical DNA. So 3% can change that much. So we have our nucleus. Inside our nucleus, we have all 46 chromosomes into one chromosome. We have chromosome banding, which is what controls, broken down into a gene, into the double helix, and into the DNA bases, with A binding to T and C binding to G. Okay, so this is where we're going to stop for today. Tomorrow we're going to start talking about sexual and asexual reproduction and going into how that can change the diversity. So if you need to go back and pause the video and rewrite anything, or if you have any questions, we'll talk about it tomorrow in class.